to another Rock My Age podcast, helping women to live life to the full. I'm delighted today to have Natalie Sutherland with me. Natalie is a lawyer, a specialist family lawyer, and she works for a firm called Burgess Me. And Natalie specialises in surrogacy and fertility law. And recently, I've been very interested in the subject. I've been following a column by a award-winning journalist called Sophie Beresiner. And she has had a column called The Mother Project, and it's been charting Sophie's journey from being diagnosed with cancer in 2010 to exploring IVF and then exploring surrogacy. And finally having a baby M, she calls the baby, and becoming a mother. It's a beautiful story and really touched my heart. And I was at the same time introduced to Natalie. And so Natalie and I had a conversation a few months ago, and I thought it'd be really interesting to talk about this subject. I'll be interested in, age aspects of surrogacy, the process, the challenges. So Natalie, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm delighted to be sharing this conversation subject together. So I guess first thing, how did you get into this? And I guess how did you specialize in it? And what inspires you to work in this area?
Well, I've been a family lawyer now for a good 15 years. And so my main specialists are divorce and financial remedies and dealing with children on divorce. And that's a major aspect of what most family lawyers do. But there are some of us who will do this other aspect of family law, which is creating families. And that's a really nice way of balancing the two, I think. So I became involved a few years ago in another firm, and I absolutely loved it. I loved that process of helping either single people or couples become a family, and it really does give you a sense of achievement as well when you help them in that journey. So for me, it's a personal enjoyment.
And what's the mix of people who are looking for surrogacy? So between what's the size of the opportunity, I suppose, for people? How many cases go through a year? And is there a difference in challenges and process for, say, heterosexual couples versus gay couples?
Well, so surrogacy has become a lot more popular in recent years. It kind of had a bit of a stigma, back in the 80s, and there was lots of media things about buying babies and things like that. But we really feel like that stigma is gone now, and especially now the law has changed so that gay couples and unmarried couples, single people can all benefit and become families through surrogacy. It has become a lot more popular. So whilst there's not hundreds of cases, like thousands every year, there's about 300 or 400 of those couples asking the courts to order parental orders. And obviously I'll talk a bit more about that, but that's what you need to become the legal parent through having had a child through surrogacy, and that's increasing all the time. So and also there's probably, that's how much we know in terms of people applying to the courts, but there may be more children born through surrogacy that we don't know about, because these people might either not know that they need a parental order, or perhaps they are not eligible for a parental order, so don't apply, but have still created their family using surrogacy. So we don't know the absolute numbers, but it is increasing in popularity. There are more cases now.
And what's the process in terms of, say, when you get involved? So it'd be really nice to just kind of understand a little bit about where you start from. I think you mentioned to me about this idea of, it's quite overwhelming at the beginning, or it can be. I guess particularly if people have gone through other processes of perhaps trying to have a family already.
Yes,
quite a sensitive issue.
Yeah.
And how do you get involved? Why do you get involved? And sort of, I guess, how do you guide them through the process? Because I imagine there's challenges or questions, should I say, about what country perhaps does surrogacy take place, or what happens there, and choice of whether they work with an agency, or I think you said there was a pool of surrogates that you can connect with. So anyway, you're the expert.
So many questions. So when you come to think about surrogacy, everybody's journey is different. and for straight people who might have had have tried to conceive themselves naturally and have found it difficult and have maybe looked at other aspects and then come to surrogacy that way. Or you might have two gay men who know that they can't have a child naturally, and so they become interested in surrogacy immediately. So how you come to surrogacy will all depend on your own personal journey. But when you do come to surrogacy, I mean, it's not easy. You have lots of decisions to make. There are lots of choices. So and all of that can be overwhelming. So I mean, even when I started doing this type of law, you have to factor in loads of different things. It's like a jigsaw. So you have to have the knowledge as to how all these pieces fit together. And so you obviously need a surrogate. And how do you find that surrogate? And then once you have your baby and you come and do the parental order at the end, you need to know that you've got all of those eligibility criteria done for yourselves and that you would be able to apply for it. So my advice is always, when you're looking at this, come and see a family lawyer, because we can help you. We can help guide you as to all the people that you need to speak to. So whilst our legal involvement will come in at the very end, so right at the end of the journey, you've made all these decisions and you have found your surrogate and you've had your baby and you're a family, and then you've got to do this legal process, which you much rather probably just enjoy your child in those new months, but there is this thing that you have to do. So and that's where we will come involved. But having that chat with a family lawyer right at the outset to build that relationship with that person that you are going to need at the end, and to make sure that all those decisions that you're making are all the right ones, that they will lead you to the path that you need to be on to get that parental order at the end. And also we can make sure that you have all the eligibility criteria ticked. And if you are going to go internationally and choose another jurisdiction where you will conduct the artificial insemination and the IVF and the transfer into a surrogate in those countries, the law is different in each, obviously, in individual jurisdiction. But if you are going to be bringing that child back to the UK to bring that child up here, then the law here applies. So you will have to make sure that you are still eligible. So that's where a family lawyer will come in to help you make sure that you are on the right path to begin with, and then we can touch base as well with all the other connecting dots. So the surrogacy agency, the fertility clinic if necessary, the lawyers in the other jurisdiction, definitely. So and then when you're back here, we can put you in touch with immigration lawyers if you need that help to come back into the country, and then and also then we'll be able to start the process immediately for your parental order.
Goodness, God, I can see why you need someone to help you through that. There were a couple of things that you said there, and it reminded me of a couple of the things that Sophie said in her column. And one was that she said, while surrogacy makes me often a very interesting dinner guest, I find myself apologizing for the complex nature of my motherhood. And is that something that often comes up in the conversations that you have with people, that it must be quite an emotional journey?
Yeah.
This idea of how do I sort of explain that to others? She talks often about her own parents and the generation before and how they saw it. And so does those types of conversations come up, Natalie?
Definitely. And also it's going to be relevant when it comes to your child's birth story, because if you're a gay couple, for example, and you have a child, they are going to be asking questions pretty quickly as to where they might have come from and where's mum, for example, because they'll see their other friends with a mum and a dad, and they've got two dads. So those conversations will be and should be had fairly early on in a child-centered way. But if you are a heterosexual couple, people aren't necessarily going to think, is this a surrogate born child? The assumption there will be, believe that this is a naturally conceived child. So so for mothers like that, where they're going to have to explain it to their child, then perhaps explaining it to other people as well might be something on their mind. But as I said, surrogacy is becoming much more popular these days. So so I think it's a less of a stigma than it would have had many years ago.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I remember Sophie said in house school, it was early on, I guess, and that's interesting, isn't it, when you have that conversation? Because I think, and she was saying early on, will she ever feel like she's mine? Because every time I talk about the topic, I kind of explain that she didn't start out that way, and then you equally, from what you were saying, she can't be recognized as my daughter until we go through that process, which can take quite a long time. And I imagine with COVID even longer. So that piece in the middle must be quite difficult emotionally and also to navigate for people.
No, it is, because if you were having a child naturally, you would go to hospital, give birth to the child, come home and start your life together. But that's not the case for children who are born through surrogacy. There is this extra hurdle to go through, and it's not a quick thing. It's it's an application form. It's applying to court, waiting for the court to deal with things, filing statements to tell the court why it is you've come to surrogacy. For people having children through surrogacy, I can absolutely understand how stressful that having to do this is, which is why, so the Law Commission, we talked about this before as well, the Law Commission is looking into the law of surrogacy, because in the UK, the surrogate will always be the child's legal mother. So this is why Sophie is having this issue with, there is a period of time where she's biologically mine, I'm looking after her, she is, for all intents and purposes, my child, but there is this lacuna because she's not legally hers. So, so you have to wait for this process. It could be 6, 8 months, 12 months. The child could be over 1 by the time you get your final order, and that's going to increase anxiety when you're also looking after a newborn. So the Law Commission is looking at a different way around this, not for international surrogacies, but for domestic, where when the child is born, provided that there have been all these preconception things such as implications counselling, medical checks, criminal records checks, and a parental agreement in place, a surrogacy agreement, then provided you've ticked all of those boxes, then and the child is born, then the legal parents at birth will be the intended parents, like you'll have in certain states of America. So when that child is born, even though it's born via another lady, that child is yours immediately. Now the tension with that is that the court also sees the autonomy of the woman who has carried that child. So that's why she has this say over whether or not she consents to this child being given to another couple. So, but in this new pathway that the Law Commission is looking at, and this won't be law for many years, but they're looking at it next year, is whether or not the intended parents will be the legal parents from birth, and then a period of time where the surrogate can change her mind. So she can say, actually, I've really bonded with this child. I want to say in this. So what would happen then, in what they're proposing, is that the surrogate would have that opportunity to object within a period of time, and then this new pathway just falls away, and you go back to the parental order process. So again, the intended parents will then have to apply to court and do the same thing that they're doing at the moment. So, but what they're also proposing is whether or not the court has the new power to override the surrogate's objection, because at the moment, absolutely, the surrogate needs to consent to that parental order, and if she doesn't, if she changes her mind for whatever reason, that parental order cannot be made. So that is also a fear for many intended parents going through surrogacy in the UK, because it is all based on trust. So, so this is why the Law Commission is looking at that, to see whether or not they can make it a bit more straightforward for intended parents. And of course, this also helps surrogates who have a similar worry that the intended parents might change their mind, and they'll be stuck with a baby they had no intention of carrying, or not carrying, bringing up. So, so yeah, so they're looking into that, and that's very welcome, I think, for intended parents and surrogates.
Yeah, I can see, because that could be a real minefield, couldn't it? 'Cause either way it could change.
Yeah.
And then, people don't know how to deal with that. Just a question for you, Natalie. What's the I suppose what's the choices people make when they would choose surrogacy versus adoption? Are there, I mean, I can imagine some of them, but are there obvious perspectives from your side?
Well, the obvious thing is the biological connection. So surrogacy and adoption, whilst they're similar, they are really not the same. So surrogacy is where you have thought about a child that you want to bring into the world, and you go to the steps to conceive that child. And so for couples, there has to be a biological connection for at least one of you. And if you're a single person wanting that parental order, it has to be your biological material. So either the sperm from the man if the woman can't carry, or the woman's egg as well. So there has to be that biological connection, and then the child has been brought into this world having been intended by these intended parents, but they've needed help. They needed help to bring that child into the world because fertility affects so many people, and the childlessness for many people is just devastating. And so surrogacy is a way to try and help you create your family. If you've tried everything else and it hasn't worked, there is this available to you. The downside, of course, is it's expensive. So because there are so many different moving parts, lots of different people involved, it is expensive. Adoption, on the other hand, is where yes, you will create your family through that adoption, but that child has not come into this world because you have intended for them to do so. They already have a family, and for whatever reason, that family either give them up because they can't look after them, or a local authority might come in and say you can't look after that child. So so children are put up for adoption, and then if you are wanting to create your family through adoption, then there's a rigorous process to go through. So whereas in surrogacy, there at the moment there's no kind of checks on whether or not you are a suitable parent, just as there isn't for like naturally conceived children. You just get pregnant and have a child that way, but the checks and balances come in at the end. So I think Sophie's been talking about this as well, where the court appoints a parental order reporter who will come to your home and will check that child is suitably looked after, and whether or not they recommend that a parental order should be made. So obviously, there is that investigation, but it's not as rigorous as when you are adopting, because the people that are looking after these children who can't be looked after by their parents, they want to make sure that they're going into a family that they're just suitable for them. So there's more checks there before you get your child. And then the adoption order has the same transformative effect as a parental order. So the legal status and the parental responsibility of the original birth parents is extinguished forever, and the adoption order creates the legal parentage status for the adoptive parents for life. So they have a similar transformative effect, but they're not quite the same.
Got it. Thank you. That's really helpful. Two other questions. You mentioned expensive. I'm not going to ask you how much the process is. I'm sure it varies according to the process in the countries, and you explain some of that. But I can imagine there are couples who, as you say, want to create a family, perhaps are low-income families. Are there, I suppose, groups or charities that help support people to go through the surrogacy process, or is it just literally, if you can afford it, you can go down that route?
I wish there was. I wish there was a kind of similar NHS type scenario to help people on lower incomes to create families, because it really does feel like there is an expense barrier there, that if you have the ability, then of course you have that option available to you. But yes, the costs do vary depending on where you do it. So you on the one hand, you could bypass so there are not-for-profit agencies that will assist you as an intended parent or as a surrogate and kind of matching you. There is a loophole in the law that allows not-for-profit people to do that. You can't do it commercially. So you could sign up with one of these agencies. Again, that costs money, and then be able to find your surrogate, and then you would normally do this sort of transfer through an IVF clinic, and that costs money. And then once you have your baby, then you've got to apply for the parental order. You can do it yourself, but you might have trouble, so you employ a lawyer, and that costs money. So that's one area. Then there's some people that will not necessarily go through these agencies and will connect with other like-minded people on social media sites. So that has become more popular these days. So Facebook groups, all that type of thing, where everybody starts chatting together. And there's nothing wrong, nothing illegal with intended parents and surrogates kind of meeting in those types of forum. The problem that there might be later down the line is that perhaps you haven't got the advice that would have helped you make certain other decisions. So and again, if you could create the baby through artificial insemination, not through a clinic, so that is still ability for you. So that is where you would have the surrogate. So there's two different types. There's the gestational surrogate, who is the lady who carries the child but has no biological connection to that child, because the embryo would have been created either through the eggs and sperm of the intended parents, or perhaps donated sperm or donated egg outside of the womb, and then put in through IVF. And then that mother then is the gestational surrogate. Or you can have a traditional surrogate, where the surrogate is she carries the child, but it's also her egg. So they create that embryo not through sexual intercourse, but through artificial insemination, and that's where the turkey baster, basically. So that's how you would sort of get that in there. And that's the easiest and less invasive and less expensive way of creating a child like that. And then that surrogate will then be the traditional surrogate, but she'll also have that, with that biological connection. And in either scenario, when that child is born, the surrogate is still the legal parent, and you still have to go through the same parental order process regardless of which type. But there are these are the decisions that you'll make in terms of what works for you, what's easier. And then if you go to other jurisdictions, so the US, where it's highly commercialized, highly regulated, there you're going to have costs of an agency, because you'll need someone there to help you find a surrogate. So it's an agency cost. Then you will have the fertility clinic costs, and none of this is NHS, it's all private. And if your surrogate is in different states to where your fertility clinic is, you're paying for the travel. And then you will need to instruct a lawyer in the same state as where your surrogate is to advise you on the law there, where they are there. And then you've got all the flight costs and all that kind of stuff. And then Canada is a similar system, but they tend to be cheaper. They do have an NHS type system, so you would be able to get your hospital appointments and all that kind of stuff sort of on the NHS, but not for when the baby's born, I believe. So there's lots of different options depending on what works for you and what you have the money for, basically.
So and yeah, it sounds like it's a real breadth.
Yeah.
But it's such a shame at the moment that is, at any level, it's an expensive process, isn't it?
It is.
Very, very least. And the other question I wanted to ask was about age. So are there age parameters, limitations around either having a surrogate or going through the surrogacy process? How does that play out?
Well, the surrogate themselves, obviously, you are going to be looking at someone who is fairly young, because you're going to want somebody fit and healthy who's going to be able to carry your child. And surrogates are usually people, they're not teenagers, they're not really young. Usually you want someone who has had their own children, so that they are coming to it altruistically. They just want to help somebody, rather than, if it's a first-time child, you don't know how that person's going to feel about having carried that child. So your surrogate is going to be, especially if you go to someone like America, they will be heavily tested to make sure that they are absolutely at tip-top health. So you will be satisfied that you'll have that surrogate who is going to be able to carry your child. But in terms of the intended parents, now this is why, you know, like someone like myself, like, you know, I'm sort of early 40s, and you know, what if I couldn't have children naturally? Perhaps that would be something I would like to choose. So yes, so it will, infertility obviously affects the older generation or older people. So that's why it's so it's becoming a lot more popular. Yeah, so there's no you know, age range that's going to stop you from being an intended parent. Obviously, when you have that child, you want to make sure that you are you're going to not be tired, too tired to look after a newborn. But
isn't it? So what you're saying is, you know, you could be, let's say, I'm just using an example, might be a very wrong example. Say you could be 55, you've gone through menopause, you would have to have frozen your eggs previously, I presume. But you
or egg donor.
Or donor. You could go through then that process of having surrogacy up to a certain age, as you say, whatever age you feel you've got to have the energy to still newborn, which yeah, it's from my own experience, it's those early days are exhausting if you're working as well. But is that true that, you know, there is a time span that you could still have?
Yes, I mean, you can go down a surrogacy journey. It doesn't matter how old you are as the intended parents. It's just down to your personal choice as to whether or not that's something that you want to do. But, you know, having a child, it's a huge driver for lots of people to make sure that you know, it's an inherent thing, isn't it? It's you have that maternal or paternal calling, and if you can't do it naturally, then there's even more of an impetus to try everything to try and help create your family. And, you know, and there's IVF clinics that you can try, you know, to try and carry it yourself. But, you know, like with Sophie, you know, with cancer, if something really affects your ability to carry a child, but your eggs are fine, then this is something that you can try.
So on that point, I just loved, I mean, I've kind of come full circle there, haven't we, in a sense. I loved this thing you said at the very beginning about, there's many things about family law, but this piece around helping people to create a family. It sounds like it's a really rewarding process. And as you say, you know, in Sophie's case, in her column, it's a really heartwarming story through that. So Natalie, thank you so much for sharing all of that information. I know there were some things you said to me at the end that were kind of really important, I suppose, for people, just to, one, not be overwhelmed by the process and the situation, so that actually, I guess in some ways that you can enjoy the process.
Yes, exactly.
And those decisions about where does the process happen, which country. You talked about finding your own path through agencies, lawyers, etc. And I guess the very important point, which is where obviously you and your firm come into play, is getting that guidance, having someone alongside you rather than you doing it on your own. Would that be fair? And is there anything else that you would add to that would be?
Well, yes, so because there are so many different choices to make and so many different decisions, you know, my one takeaway, I think, for your listeners, is to have that family lawyer as your first step. Because then we will be able to have that conversation with you, because you're going to need us at the end. So get us in at the beginning so that we can help you, and then we can guide you with all the different. So I work with a lot of other providers, so agencies and fertility clinics and other lawyers and other jurisdictions. So I have a good working relationship with those other professionals. And also there's a lot of information on the internet. So it is going to be overwhelming with all this information. So you might be the type of person who loves to do that, who loves to do all the research and do all of that. And I put out webinars and things like that to help you with, you know, choosing jurisdiction and all that kind of stuff. But if you're the type of person that goes, oh my God, I can't deal with it, it's just too much, then make that appointment to come to the family lawyer as your first step. And then we can basically help you sift through all of that information and set you on the right path for you, and then dip in and out as you need us. So you're not going to be paying for lawyers for all of that period. You're just going to be you're going to have a friendly face and a friendly voice at the end of the phone to be able to help you make those decisions as and when you need that help. And then when you have that bundle of joy in your hands, then we are ready to go on getting that process sorted for you. And I love going to final hearings with the judges when you get the order and they have a photo with the judge, and I get all teary, and it's just like such a great day.
Oh, Natalie, that's lovely. Thank you so much. It's just an amazing wealth of information. It's such a rich conversation, such a lovely subject to be talking about. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Have me.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation today, and if you'd like to listen to more conversations with inspiring women, do look at our website, rotmyage.com, or register to have them delivered direct to your inbox. Until next time.